The millionaire kicked his wife out mercilessly, sure of his victory. But 5 years later, she returns by private jet, and with triplets. The shock is overwhelming when he sees faces identical to his own. Now the millionaire will have to face the truth he abandoned. If this story has caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. The crystal glass trembled slightly in Helen's hands when the first guests began to arrive for the dinner celebrating 5 years of marriage. She adjusted her red silk dress, a recent gift from Gabriel, her husband, and took a deep breath, trying to control the anxiety consuming her. The Montero mansion was impeccable, as always. White flower arrangements strategically decorated. Each room, the aroma of food prepared by the award-winning chef, already spread through the corridors, and the temperature was perfectly controlled for a spring evening. From the top of the marble staircase, Helen observed the precise movements of the staff, who went to great lengths to ensure everything was perfect, exactly as Mrs. Charlotte, her mother-in-law, demanded. The family matriarch had just arrived and was already directing the final adjustments with her usual austere posture, casting critical glances at every detail her eyes could reach. "Helen, darling, you should be receiving guests alongside Gabriel, not up here alone," Charlotte's voice echoed, mixing false sweetness with veiled criticism. "After all, you are the hostess of this special evening." With a rehearsed smile, Helen descended the stairs, her Louboutin heels marking each step on the polished marble. "Forgive me, Charlotte. I was just checking if everything was in order." Her cell phone vibrated in her gold clutch, but she ignored that tonight she needed to be fully present. The main hall was beginning to fill with the cream of society, businessmen, politicians, local celebrities. Everyone wanted to be present at the celebration of the couple of the moment. Gabriel Montero, the young business prodigy who at 35 already commanded a business empire, and Helen, the beautiful and discreet wife who had managed to win the heart of the city's most coveted bachelor. "Where is my son?" Charlotte asked, her perceptive eyes scanning the room. "He should have been here half an hour ago." Helen felt a knot form in her throat. Gabriel was late, something extremely unusual for someone so meticulous about schedules. She took out her cell phone again, this time to check messages. Nothing from him, just some work notifications and an unread message from an unknown number. The minutes dragged on, and Helen alternated between cordial smiles for guests and anxious glances toward the main door. Her heart raced when finally Gabriel crossed the entrance. Tall, imposing in his custom Italian suit, he carried an expression she had never seen before, a mixture of contained fury and disappointment that made her blood freeze. He walked directly to her, ignoring the greetings from guests. His eyes, normally a warm brown, were dark and stormy. "We need to talk," he said in a low, controlled tone that carried an implicit threat. "Now." Charlotte approached quickly, her maternal sixth sense alerting her that something was wrong. "Gabriel, darling, we have guests. Any matter can wait until—" "No, mother, it can't." His voice cut through the air like a blade. Holding Helen by the elbow with more force than necessary, Gabriel led her to his private office, a sanctuary few were permitted to enter. Helen's heart beat uncontrollably. In 5 years of marriage, she had never seen him like this. Something was terribly wrong, but she couldn't imagine what. Her hands trembled as she was practically dragged through the luxurious corridors of the mansion, feeling the curious glances of guests on her back. As they entered the office, Gabriel closed the door with a dull thud that seemed to seal the fate of both. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the ticking of the antique clock on the wall and his heavy breathing. Helen remained standing, her red dress dramatically contrasting with the dark tones of the room's decor. "Who is he?" The question came out as a growl between Gabriel's clenched teeth. Helen blinked, confused. "He who?" Gabriel pulled the cell phone from his pocket and approached dangerously. "Don't play dumb, Helen. I saw the messages." Helen's world seemed to spin in slow motion as Gabriel threw her own cell phone on the mahogany desk, the one she had left charging in the bedroom earlier. On the screen, a sequence of messages from an unknown number glowed accusingly. "Everything is prepared for tomorrow. I can't wait to see you." It will be our secret. I can explain, Helen began, her voice trembling. It's not what you're thinking. Oh, it's not. Gabriel laughed, a bitter sound she had never heard from him before. Then explain to me, Helen. Explain why my wife is exchanging secret messages with an unknown man. Explain why you have secret meetings scheduled. Gabriel, please listen to me, she begged, trying to approach, but he backed away as if her touch could burn him. These messages are not what they seem. I was organizing. Enough lies, he exploded, his voice reverberating off the walls of the office. 5 years, Helen. 5 years of marriage. And this is how you repay me. With betrayal? The office door opened, and Charlotte entered, her eyes shining with a mixture of concern and something more, something that seemed almost like satisfaction. What's happening here? The guests are starting to comment. Mom, please, give us a moment, Helen tried, but her mother-in-law remained firmly where she stood. No, dear, Charlotte answered with false docility. As a mother, I need to stand by my son in such a delicate moment. Gabriel ran his hands through his impeccably combed hair, disheveling it. Did you know? Did you know she was cheating on me? No, Helen shouted, tears beginning to stream down her face. I never cheated on you, Gabriel. These messages are about... About what? He interrupted, approaching again. About your secret meetings? About how you've been lying to me? Tell me, Helen, how long has this been going on? Charlotte placed a hand on her son's shoulder. Gabriel, darling, perhaps it's better to resolve this after the party. The guests... To hell with the guests, he vociferated. My life is falling apart, and you're worried about appearances. Helen felt a wave of nausea hit her. She needed to tell the truth, needed to explain about the secret project she was organizing, about the surprise she had planned for him. But the words seemed stuck in her throat, choked by the intensity of the accusations and Charlotte's triumphant look. I want you out of this house, Gabriel declared, his voice now dangerously calm. No, Helen whispered, feeling her legs weaken. Please, let me explain. There's something you need to know. The only thing I need to know is already quite clear in these messages, he cut her off. Take your things and leave. I never want to see you again. Charlotte moved quickly to the door, discreetly calling for some security guards. Escort Mrs. Montero to the bedroom so she can gather her personal belongings, she ordered with cruel efficiency. Helen looked around desperately, like a cornered animal. The security guards who had so often protected her now observed her with a mixture of pity and judgment. Her world, built over 5 years of dedication and love, was crumbling before her eyes because of a misunderstanding that no one would allow her to explain. With trembling steps, she began walking toward the door, stopping only once to look back. Gabriel had turned to the window, his back rigid like an insurmountable wall. Charlotte, on the other hand, was watching her with a small, barely disguised smile of satisfaction. The bedroom that had been her refuge for 5 years now seemed like a minefield. Helen moved mechanically, taking only the essentials while the security guards observed her with impassive gazes. Her hands trembled as she collected documents, some personal jewelry, and basic clothes. The red dress, which just hours ago represented celebration, now weighed on her body like a mark of shame. You have 10 minutes, ma'am, announced one of the security guards, his professional voice masking any emotion. Helen nodded silently, swallowing the lump forming in her throat. Her eyes scanned the luxurious closet, filled with gifts Gabriel had given her over the years. Each piece told a story, held a memory, but she couldn't afford to dive into memories now. Opening her personal drawer, her fingers found a small envelope hidden beneath silk scarves. Inside it, the test results she had planned to reveal to Gabriel on this special night. Positive, 4 weeks pregnant. The surprise she had been organizing in secret, the messages exchanged with the decorator who would prepare the baby's room, now seemed like a cruel irony of fate. A slight nausea overcame her, a mixture of anxiety and the first signs of pregnancy. Helen took a deep breath, tucking the envelope into her purse. This wasn't how she had imagined telling Gabriel he would be a father, not amid unfounded accusations and broken hearts. Outside the bedroom, raised voices echoed down the corridor. The guests, realizing something was wrong, were beginning to disperse. Helen could hear Charlotte giving polite but firm explanations, transforming the celebration of love into a spectacle of humiliation. "Time's up, ma'am," the security guard announced, approaching with an expression mixing embarrassment and determination. Helen closed the small suitcase she had managed to pack and cast a final glance around the room. On the bedside table, the photo from their wedding still smiled, frozen in a moment of happiness that now seemed to have happened in another life. She stretched out her hand to take it, but the security guard cleared his throat, indicating they needed to leave. The journey through the mansion's corridors was like a funeral procession. Staff who had treated her with respect and affection for years now averted their gaze, some whispering among themselves. The scent of white flowers, once so pleasant, now seemed suffocating. Reaching the main door, Helen found Gabriel standing on the first step of the external staircase, hands in the pockets of his Italian suit, gaze fixed on a distant point. Beside him, Charlotte maintained a restrained smile, like someone who finally achieves a long-planned goal. "Gabriel," Helen tried one last time, her voice barely passing for a whisper. "Please, let me explain. There's something you need to know." "Enough." "Helen," Charlotte intervened, her voice cutting. "You've already caused enough problems for one night. The driver will take you to a hotel." "No," Helen responded, finding a remnant of strength amid despair. "I'll call a taxi myself." It was then that she felt the first sharp pain in her abdomen. The pain made her stagger slightly, but she remained firm, determined not to show weakness. Her child, or children she didn't yet know, needed her to be strong in that moment. The taxi arrived in minutes that seemed like hours. Helen entered the vehicle without looking back, even when she felt the weight of Gabriel's gaze on her back. Only when the car began to move, leaving behind the imposing gates of the Montero mansion, did she allow tears to flow freely. "Where to, ma'am?" asked the taxi driver, looking at her in the rearview mirror with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Helen hesitated for a moment. Her entire life in recent years had been centered in that mansion, alongside Gabriel. Her friends were his friends. Her places were the places they frequented together. Where to go when your entire world collapses in a single night? "To the bus station, please," she finally responded, her hand unconsciously resting on her still flat belly. "I need to leave as soon as possible." The bus journey lasted 12 hours, each mile taking Helen not only away from Boston, but also from the life she had known until then. Jacksonville appeared on the horizon with the rising sun, its beaches and mountains offering a completely different scene from the skyscrapers she had left behind. The small hotel in the city center would be her temporary home. No luxury there. Just a simple bed, a modest bathroom, and a small television. Helen placed her suitcase on the floor and sat on the edge of the bed, allowing herself, for the first time since the previous night, to fully assess her situation. Her personal savings, kept in an account that Gabriel was unaware of, would be sufficient for a few months. It wasn't much, considering she now needed to think not only of herself, but also of the baby she carried. The nausea returned full force, reminding her of her delicate condition. "One step at a time," she murmured to herself, opening the window to let in the sea breeze. In the days that followed, Helen established a routine. In the morning, she looked for apartments to rent and sent out resumes. In the afternoon, she walked around the city, familiarizing herself with her new environment. The nights were the most difficult. Alone in the hotel room, her thoughts inevitably returned to Gabriel, to the life she had left, to the explanations she couldn't give. It was during one of these walks that fate decided to intervene. Helen was observing the window display of a baby store, imagining how it would be to decorate a baby's room, when an elegant woman stopped beside her. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" the stranger commented, pointing to a set of cribs on display. "My daughter just made me a grandmother, and I can't pass this store without stopping to look." Helen smiled politely, trying to disguise the tears forming in her eyes. The woman, who appeared to be about 50, observed her attentively. "Forgive my indiscretion, but are you all right? You look a bit pale." As if to confirm the stranger's Observation. A wave of dizziness hit Helen. She staggered slightly, being supported by the woman's firm arms. "Come, let's sit over there," the stranger indicated a nearby cafe. "I'm Elizabeth Richards, and I don't accept no for an answer." There was something in Elizabeth's decisive yet welcoming posture that reminded Helen of her own mother, absent for so many years. Without the strength to protest, she allowed herself to be led to a table at the cafe. "Now tell me, dear, how far along are you in your pregnancy?" Helen's eyes widened in surprise. "How did you experience?" Elizabeth smiled, signaling to the waiter. "I run a network of obstetric clinics. I recognize the signs. Plus, the way you were looking at that window display. 2 ginger teas." "Please," she ordered from the waiter. Elizabeth's words awakened something in Helen. "Obstetric clinics. Are you the owner of the New Life Network?" "Guilty," Elizabeth laughed. "You know our work?" "Of course. I worked in marketing in Boston. Your network is a reference in humanized care." The tea arrived, and Helen felt the comforting aroma calm her stomach. Elizabeth observed her with growing interest. "And what brings someone with your experience to Jacksonville? Forgive me if I'm being intrusive, but something tells me you need to talk." Perhaps it was the tea, perhaps the emotional exhaustion of recent days, or simply Elizabeth's maternal presence. But Helen found herself telling her story. The words flowed like a dammed river that finally finds an outlet. The marriage to Gabriel, the night of the celebration, the misinterpreted messages, the expulsion, the unrevealed pregnancy. Elizabeth listened to everything in silence, her face expressing deep understanding. When Helen finished, she leaned forward, her eyes shining with a decision already made. "You said you're looking for work? Well, I just lost my marketing director to a multinational. The universe sometimes works in mysterious ways, don't you think?" The medical office was silent when Dr. Richard entered with the test results in hand. Helen, seated in the chair in front of the desk, tried to control her anxiety. Beside her, Elizabeth held her hand in a maternal gesture of support that in recent weeks had become familiar. "Mrs. Helen," the doctor began, adjusting his glasses while looking carefully at the papers, "your tests revealed something unusual." Helen's heart raced. "Is something wrong with my baby, doctor?" "Not exactly wrong," he smiled, turning the ultrasound monitor so she could see. "Actually, there are 3 perfectly healthy babies here." The world seemed to stop for an instant. "3?" Helen whispered, her voice barely coming out. "Yes, identical triplets. It's a quite rare condition," explained the doctor, pointing to the screen where 3 small dots pulsed in synchrony. "But I need to warn you that it will be a high-risk pregnancy. You'll need constant monitoring." Elizabeth squeezed Helen's hand more firmly. "She will have all the necessary support, doctor. You can be sure of that." Helen barely heard the conversation that followed about special care, vitamins, and restrictions. Her mind was stuck on the image of those 3 small beings growing inside. Her 3 babies, 3 lives that now depended exclusively on her. "I'm going to need a bigger apartment," she murmured, more to herself than to the others present. "Don't worry about that now," Elizabeth responded promptly. "You can stay in my house until you're better established. The important thing is to keep you and the babies healthy." Dr. Richard printed the ultrasound images, handing them to Helen with a gentle smile. "First photo of your triplets. Do you want to know the sex?" Helen looked at the small spots in the image, 3 points of light that changed everything. "They're boys," she said, unable to explain how she was so certain. "Correct," the doctor confirmed, surprised. 3 identical boys. Leaving the office, Helen felt simultaneously lighter and heavier. The responsibility was immense, but there was something deeply comforting in knowing she wasn't completely alone. She carried 3 small pieces of Gabriel, 3 chances for unconditional love. "You don't have to do this alone," Elizabeth said as they walked to the car. "I know we've met recently, but something tells me you were sent by God to fill a void in my life. I was never able to have children, you know. I built my empire of clinics trying to compensate for that, helping other women realize their dream of motherhood." Helen stopped, turning to face her mentor. "Why are you doing all this for me, Elizabeth?" "Because I saw in your eyes something I recognize. The strength of a woman who just needs an opportunity to shine, Elizabeth responded with simplicity. Besides, I've always wanted to be a grandmother, and now I'll gain 3 grandchildren at once. The two laughed, a moment of lightness amid so many concerns. On the way home, Helen thought of Gabriel, imagining his reaction if he knew he would be the father of triplets. Her heart ached at the thought that her children might grow up without knowing their father, but something inside her said that fate still had many cards to play. "Elizabeth," she called softly, "I think I have an idea to expand the reach of the clinics." "I'm all ears," Elizabeth responded, recognizing the entrepreneurial gleam in her protégé's eyes. "What if we created a line of products for pregnant women and babies, something that would complement the clinic's care but could also reach women throughout the country?" Elizabeth smiled, proud. "Continue." "We could start with basic products, comfortable clothes for pregnant women, specific personal care, products for pregnancy, personalized layettes for babies. But the differential would be the concept of comprehensive monitoring. Each product would come with medical guidance, expert tips, emotional support. A brand that understands and embraces the complete journey of motherhood," Elizabeth completed, excited. "Helen, that's brilliant." The rest of the journey was filled with ideas and plans. Helen felt her mind bubbling with possibilities, marketing strategies, product concepts. For the first time since leaving Boston, she no longer felt like a victim of circumstances. She was a woman with a mission, a future mother, building not just a business, but a legacy for her children. In the Montero mansion, the silence was deafening. Gabriel ran his hand over his unshaven face, observing the computer screen without really seeing the numbers flashing in red. The company, once so solid, showed worrying signs of instability. 3 months had passed since the night of the dinner, and nothing seemed to make sense anymore. "Son, you need to react," Charlotte said, entering his office without knocking. "The board is concerned about your behavior. You barely appear at meetings, ignore important calls. Now you're concerned about the company, Mother," Gabriel retorted, his voice hoarse from disuse. "Where was your concern when you approved that disastrous investment in Asia?" Charlotte adjusted her pearl necklace, a nervous gesture that didn't match her always controlled posture. "That investment was approved by the entire board, darling, and it was you who signed the final documents. So after you insisted for weeks," he muttered, pouring himself another finger of whiskey. "Just like you insisted that Helen was—" "Don't you dare mention that woman!" Charlotte cut him off, her eyes flashing. "She betrayed you, Gabriel. The evidence was on her phone." Gabriel closed his eyes, remembering the messages. Something about them still bothered him, a detail he couldn't identify. In the first days after Helen's departure, he had hired a private detective to investigate her, but the man mysteriously disappeared after a few weeks, leaving only an envelope with photos without definitive conclusions. "Mr. Montero," his secretary interrupted, hesitant. "The bank is on the line. It's about the irregularities found in the latest transactions." "What irregularities?" Gabriel asked, frowning. Charlotte moved quickly. "I'll handle this, darling. You're not in a condition to deal with financial matters now." But Gabriel was already more alert, years of business instinct awakening. "No, Mother, I'll take it." The conversation with the bank was revealing. Large sums of money had been transferred to accounts abroad in recent months, all apparently approved by him, but with signatures that now seemed suspicious. "How is this possible?" he questioned, going through documents on his desk. "Who would have access to the—" His voice died as he found a folder he didn't recognize. Inside it, contracts with his signature, or something very similar, authorizing high-risk investments and international transfers. The date of the documents coincided with his weeks of greatest emotional instability, when he could barely get out of bed. "Mother," he called, his voice dangerously calm. "Can you explain this?" Charlotte was standing near the door, her rigid posture betraying her unease. "It's just business, darling. Sometimes we need to make difficult decisions for the good of the company." "Difficult decisions?" Gabriel stood up, staggering slightly. "You forged my signature, diverted millions to ghost accounts." "It was necessary," she exploded, abandoning the mask of serenity. You were sinking into depression because of that woman. Someone needed to take the reins of the business. Gabriel stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. The reins of the business? Or was it a perfect opportunity to assume the control you always wanted? The silence that followed was his answer. Gabriel staggered to his chair, feeling the weight of each decision, each glass of whiskey. Each moment he allowed his pain to cloud his judgment. "Get out of here," he ordered, his voice trembling with contained anger. "Gabriel, be reasonable." "Get out," he shouted, throwing the empty glass against the wall. The crystal exploded into 1,000 pieces, just like his trust in everything he believed to be true. Alone in the office, Gabriel realized it wasn't just his company that was crumbling, it was his entire world. And somewhere, Helen carried with her a secret he hadn't allowed her to reveal. The Jacksonville Sun bathed the meeting room of the newly inaugurated headquarters of Little Angels, the new line of products for pregnant women and babies that was revolutionizing the market. Seated at the head of the table, with a 7-month belly housing her 3 little treasures, Helen conducted the presentation of the first quarter results with a mixture of professionalism and passion that captivated everyone. "In just 3 months, our sales have exceeded all projections," she explained, running her hands gently over her belly as the graphs were projected on the screen. "The line of clothes for pregnant women is already present in more than 200 stores across the country, and the prenatal monitoring app has surpassed 1 million downloads." Elizabeth, seated beside her, couldn't hide her pride. The initial idea of a product line had transformed into a complete ecosystem of maternal care, uniting technology, comfort, and emotional support. The partnership with the New Life Clinic network had created a perfect synergy, offering pregnant women comprehensive monitoring from the discovery of pregnancy to the baby's first years. "And most impressive," continued Helen, clicking to the next slide, "is the engagement on social media. Our community of mothers exceeds 500,000 active followers, sharing experiences and supporting each other." A slight discomfort made her pause momentarily. The triplets were especially agitated that morning, as if they wanted to participate in the presentation. Dr. Richard had warned that the last trimester would be challenging, but Helen refused to slow down. "Helen," Elizabeth intervened, noticing her expression, "I think we can take a break." "I'm fine," she smiled, determined. "Besides, we need to discuss the launch of the hospital line." The new collection of products was her biggest bet. Complete kits for maternity wards with everything mothers and babies needed during hospitalization. Each piece had been developed with comfort and practicality in mind, from robes that facilitated breastfeeding to small rompers with openings for medical access. "The first samples arrived this morning," announced Marina, the young designer Helen had discovered at a local university. "Want to see?" Helen's eyes sparkled as she examined the pieces. Each item carried the trademark of Little Angels, premium quality, combined with details designed by someone who truly understood a pregnant woman's needs. The fabrics were organic, the colors soft and comforting, the packaging environmentally friendly. "Perfect," she whispered, caressing the soft fabric of a set for triplets. "Exactly as I imagined." The meeting continued with discussions about expansion strategies, new points of sale, and international partnerships. Helen kept a special notebook where she noted each important decision. One day she wanted her children to understand how her company was born and grew along with them. When everyone left the room, Elizabeth remained. "You're transforming the lives of thousands of women, you know?" Helen smiled, moved. "I'm just trying to create the support I needed myself when I discovered the pregnancy." "And what about him?" Elizabeth asked softly. "Still don't think about telling him?" Helen ran her hand over her prominent belly. "Sometimes when I read the news about the problems in the Montero companies, I think about contacting him. But then I remember that night, the way he wouldn't listen to me, how he allowed his mother to humiliate me." "You're stronger now," Elizabeth observed. "You've built something extraordinary." "Yes," Helen agreed, looking out the window at the modern building that housed her company. But this strength didn't come from resentment or desire for revenge. It came from love, for my children, for the work I do, for the women we help. A particularly strong kick made her smile. They'll be like their father, determined, intense. I just hope they inherit a bit more patience to hear the other side of the story. Elizabeth hugged her protégé affectionately. They'll have the best of both of you because they'll have you as an example. Now let's go home. You need to rest. Helen nodded, putting her special notebook in the drawer. On the cover she had written, "For my little angels, the story of how you changed everything." One day they would understand that they were the inspiration for an empire built with love, courage, and determination. The rain lashed against the windows of the office as Gabriel obsessively searched through the company's files. 3 months of meticulous investigation had revealed a disturbing pattern of financial manipulations, all skillfully masked under an appearance of legitimacy. Each document he found was another piece of a dark puzzle that pointed in a single direction: his own mother. Mr. Montero, his new secretary, hired after a rigorous background check, entered with a folder in her hands. "We found something in Mrs. Charlotte's old office." Gabriel took the folder with trembling hands. Since confronting his mother about the irregularities, Charlotte had stepped away to take care of her health, a euphemism for her strategic disappearance after the discovery of the frauds. Inside the folder, he found something that made his heart race: a report from the private detective he had hired to investigate Helen, the same one who had mysteriously disappeared months ago. The pages were partially burned, but some information was still legible. The client: "A demonstrated discreet behavior," he read aloud. "Regular meetings with professional decorator, planning a surprise, nursery project." Gabriel let the report fall, feeling as if all the air had been sucked from the room. Nursery. The messages. On Helen's phone, the secret meetings. Everything was beginning to make a terrible sense. "Look in her medical records," he ordered the secretary, his voice trembling. "Any consultation, examination, anything from the last months before she left." While waiting, his eyes fell on a photo on his desk, the last one he had taken with Helen on a trip to Europe. Her smile, he now realized, carried a secret he hadn't allowed to be revealed. "Sir," the secretary returned with an envelope. "We found this in the dead files. These are blood tests from Mrs. Helen dated the week of the dinner." With trembling fingers, Gabriel opened the envelope. The word "positive" jumped from the page like a silent scream. Date: exactly 3 days before the fateful night of their wedding anniversary. "My God," he whispered, falling back into his chair. "What have I done?" More papers fell from the envelope: receipts from a baby decoration store, budgets for renovating one of the mansion's rooms, all carefully organized and hidden by Charlotte. The secretary cleared her throat, hesitant. "There's one more thing, sir. We found records of substantial payments made to the private detective, not by you, but by your mother. They date from weeks before the incident." The revelation hit Gabriel like a punch to the stomach. His mother had not only hidden the truth, she had actively created the lie. The detective, the messages, the distrust planted like a poisonous seed. Everything had been meticulously orchestrated. A knock on the door interrupted his dark thoughts. It was Jorge, his new financial director, bringing more documents. "Mr. Montero, we discovered something about those international transfers," he announced, depositing a stack of papers on the desk. All were directed to accounts in the name of shell companies, and guess who is the true beneficiary? "My mother," Gabriel completed without needing to see the documents. "Exactly. She had been preparing this for years, apparently, building a network of shell companies, forging documents, manipulating information. You were just another piece in her chess game." Gabriel stood up, walking to the window. The rain continued to fall, washing the city as if trying to clean years of lies and manipulations. Somewhere Helen was living her life, possibly carrying his child, a child he had rejected before even knowing of its existence. "Find her," he ordered, turning to his employees. "I don't care how much it costs or how long it takes. Find Helen. The Kiwan alarm sounded in the middle of the night, waking Elizabeth from her light sleep. Something was wrong. The screams coming from Helen's room confirmed her worst fears. Running down the hallway of the mansion, she found her protégé bent over the bed, hands clutching her 8-month belly. "The babies," Helen gasped, her face contorted with pain. "Something isn't right." "Don't move," Elizabeth ordered, already dialing Dr. Richard. "Breathe deeply and stay calm." The following minutes were a whirlwind. The medical team arrived in record time, one of the advantages of being the owner of a clinic network. Helen was transferred to the ambulance, while Elizabeth coordinated everything with the efficiency of someone who had spent a lifetime dealing with emergencies. At the clinic, Dr. Richard was already waiting with his team. "We need to perform an emergency C-section," he announced after examining Helen. "The pressure is very high and one of the babies is in distress." "It's too early," Helen protested, tears streaming down her face. "They need more time." "We don't have a choice," the doctor responded gently. "Every minute counts now." Elizabeth held Helen's hand as they prepared her for surgery. "Remember what we always say at the company? That every challenge is a disguised opportunity?" Helen tried to smile, but another contraction prevented her. "Don't let anything happen to my children, Elizabeth. They're all I have." "You have much. More than that," Elizabeth whispered, kissing her forehead. "You have a family, a company, people who love you, and your boys will be fine. They're warriors like their mother." The operating room was prepared, the medical team positioned. Dr. Richard, with decades of experience in high-risk deliveries, commanded everything with a reassuring calm. "Let's bring these little princes into the world," he said, initiating the procedure. The minutes that followed were tense. The first baby was born at 3:42 in the morning, his strong cry echoing through the room. "Michael," Helen whispered, remembering. The name she had chosen, the same as Gabriel's paternal grandfather. The second came 2 minutes later, equally healthy, despite his small size. "Gabriel Jr.," she murmured, allowing herself to honor the absent father. The third, however, took longer. "He's not breathing properly," someone said, and Helen's world seemed to freeze. "Come on, little Ryan, doctor," Richard murmured, working quickly. "Show your strength." The seconds dragged on like hours until finally, a weak but determined cry joined that of his brothers. Helen let out a sob of relief, while Elizabeth, at her side, couldn't contain her tears. "3 perfect boys," announced Dr. Richard, his voice choked with emotion. "Small but fighters." The babies were immediately taken to the neonatal ICU, standard procedure for premature babies. Helen was only able to see them briefly, but it was enough to notice what her intuition already knew. They were identical in every detail, perfect miniatures of Gabriel. "We need to stabilize her," said a nurse, noticing that Helen's pressure continued to rise. Elizabeth followed the procedures with apprehension. As a woman who had never been able to have children, that moment had a special meaning. She observed, through the ICU glass, the 3 small beings who, in such a short time, had become a vital part of her life. "Mrs. Elizabeth," called a nurse, "we need the documents to register the babies." She hesitated for a moment, thinking of Gabriel. Helen had decided to give the boys only her surname, fearing future legal complications. "3 little angels," Elizabeth murmured, looking at the babies. 3 small miracles that will change many lives. In the ICU, the triplets slept side by side, their small hands occasionally touching, as if even there, in the first hours of life, they already knew they would never be alone. Michael, Gabriel, and Ryan, 3 beats of destiny that would echo far beyond that night. Gabriel walked the corridors of the private hospital in Boston, following a lead that seemed promising. After months of fruitless searching, he had finally found medical records that could lead to Helen. His heart accelerated when he reached the obstetrics department. He was increasingly certain she had been pregnant that fateful night. "I'm sorry, Mr. Montero," the head nurse said after consulting the archives. "The patient you're looking for indeed had tests done here, but was transferred to another institution. We have no record of the destination." Frustrated, Gabriel. left the hospital and got into his car, loosening the tie that seemed to suffocate him. In the passenger seat, a folder contained all the information he had managed to gather in recent months. Old credit card statements, phone records, images from airport security cameras. His cell phone rang. It was Jorge, his financial director. "Sir, we have news about your mother. We found more accounts abroad." "How much?" Gabriel asked, exhausted. "Another 30 million, all diverted in the last 5 years. Gabriel closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his own naivete. While he built empires, his mother meticulously planned his ruin, using Helen as the perfect scapegoat. "And the detective?" "Still no sign," Jorge replied. "But we discovered something interesting. He made several trips to Jacksonville in the months after the incident." "Jacksonville?" Gabriel straightened in his seat. "Why didn't we know this before?" "The tickets were purchased in the name of a shell company. We only managed to track them now after breaking the secrecy of your mother's accounts." A new hope ignited in Gabriel's chest. Jacksonville, a city big enough to start over, far enough to hide. "Prepare the jet," he ordered. "I'll be at the hangar in an hour." While driving home, his mind wandered to the last time he had seen Helen. The red dress, the tears in her eyes, the desperate attempt to explain something he had refused to hear. How foolish he had been, so blinded by his mother's manipulation that he hadn't noticed the obvious signs. In his apartment, he hadn't been able to continue living in the mansion after discovering Charlotte's manipulations. Gabriel picked up a small suitcase and his laptop. On the screen, a news item caught his attention. Infant market gains. Promising new player. Little Angels revolutionizes sector with premium products. The photo showed the interior of an elegant store, with products that seemed to perfectly combine luxury and practicality. Something in the design, in the attention to detail, reminded him of Helen's touch. His heart raced when he noticed that the company was based in Jacksonville. "It can't be a coincidence," he murmured, saving the article. His phone rang again. This time it was his lawyer. "Gabriel, I need to warn you, your mother is filing lawsuits to try to regain control of the company, she claims. You're mentally unstable, obsessed with conspiracy theories." Gabriel laughed bitterly. "Let her try. I have all the evidence I need now." "Even so, you need to be cautious. Charlotte has powerful connections and I have the truth," he cut her off. "And perhaps in Jacksonville I'll find the last piece of this puzzle." Hanging up the phone, Gabriel looked at the framed photo on his desk, the last one he had taken with Helen. "Forgive me," he whispered to the image. "I will find you even if it's the last thing I do." The afternoon sun gently entered through the window of the Triplets' room, illuminating 3 cribs arranged in a semicircle. Helen, seated in the nursing chair, observed her little miracles completing their 4th month of life. Michael, the most agitated, energetically moved his little arms while Gabriel Jr. slept deeply. Ryan, the youngest who had scared them so much at birth, followed every movement of his mother with attentive eyes identical to his father's. "It still amazes me how different they are in personality, even being physically identical," commented Elizabeth, entering the room with more diapers. "Michael never stays still. Gabriel is the calmest and Ryan is the observer," Helen completed, smiling, exactly as their father was in business meetings, always analyzing everything before acting. The mention of Gabriel still hurt, but in a different way now. Time and motherhood had transformed the hurt into a kind of resigned melancholy. The babies were her priorities, and seeing them grow healthy after the scare of the premature birth was her greatest joy. "The new product line is ready for launch," Elizabeth commented, strategically changing the subject. "The collection Inspired by the Triplets will revolutionize the multiples market." Helen smiled, proud. The experience of being a mother of triplets had inspired a complete line of products specifically for multiple births, from adapted strollers to practical kits. For simultaneous feeding, each item was born from a real need that she herself had experienced. "Mommy is working very hard," she whispered to Ryan, who was watching her attentively, "but it's all for you, my loves." A soft cry interrupted the moment. It was Gabriel, Junior, waking up hungry. Soon, like a domino effect that Helen already knew well, Michael and Ryan also began to cry. It was time for joint breastfeeding, a practice she had perfected with time and much support from the clinic's breastfeeding consultant team. "Let me help," Elizabeth offered, already positioning the special pillows that Helen had developed specifically for breastfeeding triplets, another product that would soon be in the Little Angels catalog. While nursing, Helen couldn't help but notice how all three had expressions identical to their father. Michael frowned exactly like Gabriel did when he was concentrating. Gabriel Jr. had the same soft smile after nursing, and Ryan had that intense look that had conquered her years ago. "Business and Companies magazine wants to do a feature on you," Elizabeth commented, organizing some baby clothes. "They were impressed with the growth of Little Angels and want to know the story behind the success." Helen hesitated. Until then, she had managed to keep her personal life away from the spotlight, protecting the triplets from public exposure. But she knew that with the company's growth, it would be increasingly difficult to maintain anonymity. "What if he sees it?" she asked softly, more to herself than to Elizabeth. Maybe it's time," Elizabeth responded delicately. "The boys are growing, the company is solid, you're stronger than ever." Before Helen could respond, her cell phone vibrated with a notification. It was a news alert she maintained about Montero Companies. The headline made her heart leap. "Gabriel Montero regains total control of companies after proving $1 million frauds, mother investigated for embezzlement." "Elizabeth," she called, her voice trembling slightly, "I think you're right. Maybe it is time to let the truth come to light." The babies, as if sensing their mother's agitation, stirred in her arms. Helen soothed them gently, humming the same lullaby her own mother used to sing. Deep in her heart, she knew that sooner or later, their paths would cross again. The question was, when that moment came, would everyone be prepared for the consequences? The temporary office in Jacksonville had a view of the ocean, but Gabriel barely noticed the landscape. His eyes were fixed on the laptop screen where the Little Angels page displayed its newest collection, a complete line for triplets. The promotional photos showed 3 identical cribs, with details that seemed to respond to very specific needs. "Mr. Montero," his assistant entered hurriedly, "we found something about the owner of Little Angels." Gabriel took the file she extended, his heart accelerating as he recognized the name of the partner company, New Life Clinics, from the group commanded by Elizabeth Richards. A quick search revealed that the renowned businesswoman had significantly expanded her business in recent years, mainly after a mysterious partnership. "I want a meeting with Elizabeth Richards," he ordered. "Use any pretext, but make it happen." "Actually, sir," the assistant hesitated, "there's something else. Business and Companies magazine will publish a special feature on Little Angels tomorrow." We obtained a preview. The digital file she opened contained yet unpublished photos. Gabriel felt the air escape from his lungs when he saw the first image. Helen, more beautiful than in his memories, seated in an elegant office. But it wasn't her beauty that paralyzed him. It was what the next photo revealed. 3 identical boys about 4 months old smiling at the camera. 3 pairs of eyes he knew very well. They were his own eyes reflected in 3 perfect faces. "My sons," he whispered, the realization hitting him like a wave. She was pregnant with triplets. His hands trembled as he read the article. The story of Little Angels was presented as a tale of overcoming. A young entrepreneur who, pregnant with triplets, transformed her personal experience into an empire in the infant segment. The text didn't mention his name or the circumstances of the pregnancy, but for Gabriel each word was a silent accusation. "Cancel all my appointments," he ordered, rising abruptly, "and find Elizabeth Richards' address now." While his team mobilized, Gabriel couldn't take his eyes off the photos of the babies. Michael, Gabriel, and Ryan, according to the caption. The middle son carried his name, a gesture that made him question everything he believed he knew about Helen. His phone rang. It was Jorge from Boston. "Sir, your mother is trying to negotiate a deal. She threatens to reveal family secrets if we don't withdraw the accusations." "Let her reveal," Gabriel responded, his voice laden with determination. "There's nothing more she can use against me. I've already lost everything that mattered. There's one more thing, Jorge continued, hesitant. We found records of payments your mother made to a digital analysis laboratory weeks before that night. They specialize in manipulating text messages. The revelation was the final piece of the puzzle. The messages on Helen's phone, which had seemed so incriminating, had been fabricated. His mother hadn't just taken advantage of the situation, she had meticulously created it. Sir, his assistant returned, Elizabeth Richards has a house on English Beach, and according to our contacts, she's there now, with visitors. Gabriel grabbed his jacket, a new energy coursing through his body. After months of searching, after years of regret, fate was finally conspiring in his favor. Helen was close, and with her 3 small miracles he didn't even know existed. Prepare the car, he ordered, tucking the photos of the triplets in his pocket. It's time to meet my sons. The sound of ocean waves provided the perfect soundtrack for that tranquil afternoon at Elizabeth's beach house. Helen was in the garden, watching the triplets play on the activity mat specially developed by little angels. Michael was already trying to crawl, while Gabriel Jr. concentrated on chewing a rattle-shaped teether. Ryan, as always, alternated, his attention between his brothers and his mother. They're getting smarter every day, commented Elizabeth, bringing a tray with iced tea. And every day more like... The sound of a car parking in front of the house interrupted her sentence. Helen noticed Elizabeth's expression change subtly as she looked out the window. What is it? She asked, feeling an inexplicable shiver. Before Elizabeth could answer, firm footsteps sounded on the wooden deck leading to the garden. Helen froze as she recognized the sound, footsteps she had known so well in 5 years of marriage. Gabriel appeared at the garden door, seeming simultaneously familiar and strange, thinner, with some grey strands at his temples, but with the same intense eyes she saw daily reflected in her sons. Time seemed to stop. Helen instinctively moved to position herself between Gabriel and the babies, a protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed. Helen, he pronounced her name like a prayer, his eyes fixed on the 3 small beings on the mat. How did you find us? She managed to ask, her voice barely passing for a whisper. I never stopped looking, he answered, taking a hesitant step toward the babies. Since I discovered the truth about that night, about my mother's manipulations. A soft cry interrupted the moment. It was Ryan, sensitive as always to changes in atmosphere. By instinct, Gabriel took another step toward his son, but Helen moved quickly, picking the baby up. No, she said firmly, though her voice trembled. You can't just appear after all this time and... They are my sons too, Gabriel interrupted. His voice choked. Sons you couldn't tell me existed because I was a proud fool who wouldn't listen. Elizabeth, who had been observing the scene in silence, approached gently. Perhaps we should take this conversation inside. The babies need tranquility. Helen nodded mechanically, still cradling Ryan. Michael and Gabriel Jr., curious about the movement, began to fuss, wanting attention. Can I help? Gabriel asked hesitantly, looking at the other 2 babies. Helen felt her heart tighten, seeing the mixture of fear and hope in his eyes. Before she could respond, Michael let out a joyful squeal, extending his arms toward the father he had never known. This is Michael, Helen said softly. He has your strong temperament. Gabriel knelt near the mat, unconstrained tears streaming down his face as he picked up his son for the first time. Michael immediately grabbed his tie, pulling it with the surprising strength of a 4-month-old baby. Michael, he repeated the name, savoring each syllable. Like my grandfather. And this is Gabriel Jr., Helen continued, her voice involuntarily softening, the calmest of the 3. You gave him my name. Because, despite everything, I wanted them to have a part of you, she answered, sitting on the garden sofa with Ryan still in her arms. That in your arms is little Ryan, our warrior. Gabriel looked at the baby in his arms, then at the other 2, and finally at Helen. His face was marked by a mixture of joy, pain, and regret, so deep it was almost palpable. I know I don't deserve. Kit, he began, his voice failing, but I need to try to fix everything. I need to try to be the father they deserve, the man you deserved me to be that night." Elizabeth discreetly withdrew into the house, leaving the family in a moment that had long needed to happen. The afternoon sun was beginning to soften, casting golden shadows over the garden as Helen watched Gabriel interact with the triplets. "They're perfect," he murmured, now with Gabriel Jr. also in his lap, while Michael determinedly crawled toward him. "How could I miss so many moments?" "You weren't the only one to lose," Helen responded, adjusting Ryan in her arms. "I spent months imagining how it would be to tell you about the pregnancy. I had everything planned for that night. The surprise room I was preparing, the album of ultrasound photos. The messages on the phone," Gabriel completed, finally understanding. "They were with the decorator." "Robert," she confirmed. "He was coordinating the room renovation. Your mother must have discovered somehow and—" "She planned everything," Gabriel interrupted, his voice laden with bitterness. "Manipulated the messages, bought the detective, created the entire farce of betrayal, and I, like an idiot, fell exactly where she wanted." Michael finally reached, his father clinging to his leg to stand up. The innocent gesture brought tears to Gabriel's eyes. "Why would she do this?" Helen asked, the old pain still present in her voice. "Money, power, control," Gabriel answered, helping Michael to balance. "She had been diverting millions from the company for years. Our marriage, our happiness, threatened her dominion. Her grandchild, her 3, would be the definitive end of her control over me." Helen observed the babies interacting with their father as if they had known him forever. It was surreal to see Gabriel there, holding her children after so many months dreaming and fearing this moment. "And now?" she finally asked. "Now I beg your forgiveness," he responded, looking into her eyes. "Not for my sake, but for theirs. I don't ask to return to your life as before. I know I don't deserve it. I only ask for the chance to be a father to our children, to try to make up for lost time." Ryan chose that moment to stretch toward his brothers, a small smile illuminating his face as he saw the family reunited for the first time. "It won't be easy," Helen warned, allowing Ryan to join his brothers on the mat. "I've built a life here. I have a company, commitment." "I know," Gabriel nodded. "I read about your success. Little Angels is impressive. You transformed our tragedy into something extraordinary." "Our tragedy?" Helen raised an eyebrow. "You mean your distrust, your wounded pride?" Gabriel accepted the criticism with humility. "I have a lot to learn, a lot to redeem myself for. But look at them, Helen." He gestured to the triplets, who were now playing together on the mat. "They deserve the chance to have a complete family." Before Helen could respond, a horn sound cut through the air. It was Gabriel's driver, indicating that it was time to leave, an agreement previously made with Elizabeth for this first meeting. Can I see them again?" he asked, the vulnerability evident in his voice. Helen looked at her sons, so small and already facing such big decisions. "Tomorrow," she finally responded. "Come tomorrow at the same time. They tend to be more disposed after their afternoon nap." Gabriel's smile illuminated his tired face. He bent down, gently kissing the head of each of the triplets. "Daddy will be back tomorrow," he whispered, like a promise. The weeks that followed established a new routine in the triplets' lives. Gabriel rented a house near Elizabeth's, determined to be present in every possible moment. Every afternoon, after meetings he now conducted via video conference, he appeared punctually for what he began to call the magic hour, the period between the baby's nap and dinner. "Michael, don't pull your brother's hair," Helen gently warned, while organizing the toys scattered around the room. It was a particularly busy afternoon, with all 3 babies especially energetic. "Let me handle it," Gabriel offered, already moving to separate the brothers with the expertise of someone who was quickly learning the complexities of dealing with triplets, Helen observed, still adapting to this new reality. Gabriel had thrown himself headfirst into the role of father, studying child development, learning to change diapers, memorizing each baby's routines. It was surreal to see him, the powerful businessman, sitting on the floor playing peekaboo with 3 4-month-old babies. Ryan is quieter today, he commented, noticing that the youngest was only observing his brother's play without his usual interest in participating. Yes, I noticed, Helen responded, a note of concern in her voice. He also didn't want much of his puree at lunch. As if confirming the parents' concern, Ryan began to cry. A different cry from usual, weaker and more distressed. Helen picked him up, noticing he was warmer than normal. I think he has a fever, she said, already looking for the thermometer. In the emergency bag she always kept nearby. Gabriel approached, touching his son's forehead with concern. 38.5, he read on the digital thermometer. We need to take him to the doctor. Dr. Richard is on duty today at the clinic, Helen informed, already beginning to organize a bag with necessities. Can you stay with Michael and Gabriel while I take Ryan? No, Gabriel responded firmly. We'll all go together. They're triplets. They need to be united, especially in difficult moments. There was something in Gabriel's determination that made Helen nod. In 15 minutes they were all in his car, more spacious and already equipped with 3 appropriate baby seats. At the clinic, Dr. Richard received them immediately. The doctor examined Ryan attentively, while his brothers, seated on their father's lap, observed everything with curiosity. The fever is a symptom, the doctor explained after the examination, but I'm more concerned with some signs I've noticed. I'll need to do some specific tests. What kind of tests? Helen asked, her heart racing. Genetic, mainly, answered the doctor, his face assuming a more serious expression. I've noticed some patterns we need to investigate. Gabriel held the other 2 babies tighter, as if he could protect them from an invisible enemy. Doctor, is there something we should know? Dr. Richard hesitated for a moment. There is a rare genetic condition that can manifest in the first months of life. The symptoms Ryan presents are suggestive, but we need to be sure. And the other 2? Helen asked, her voice trembling. Being identical triplets, if the condition is confirmed, all will need to be monitored. But let's take one step at a time. First, I need the complete family history from both sides. Gabriel visibly paled. My grandfather, he said quietly. He had a rare condition. My mother never talked about it, said it was a forbidden subject in the family. The doctor nodded gravely. I'll need all the medical records you can gather. This information could be crucial. Helen sat down, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. Ryan, now calmer after the medication, looked at her with those eyes so similar to his father's, eyes that now might carry more than just physical resemblances. We'll face this together, Gabriel affirmed, his voice carrying a determination that Helen hadn't heard since the days of their marriage. No matter what it is, no matter what it costs, our children will have everything they need. Helen looked at her 3 little miracles, Michael trying to reach the medical equipment, Gabriel Jr. calmly observing everything, and Ryan, her little warrior, fighting another battle. Life, once again, placed them before a challenge. That would require all their strength and unity. The office in the Montero mansion was exactly as Charlotte had left it, each object still in its place, as if time had frozen. Gabriel searched through drawers and cabinets, looking for any document that might help understand his grandfather's condition. I found some more folders, sir, Jorge informed, entering with a dusty box. They were in the attic, with your grandfather's belongings. Gabriel took the first folder, his heart accelerating as he recognized his mother's handwriting. They were detailed notes about medical consultations, treatments, medications, a meticulous diary of the disease that had affected his grandfather. Marfan syndrome, he read aloud, the medical terminology sounding strange and frightening. Progressive cardiovascular compromise. His phone vibrated. It was Helen. The test results are in, she informed, her voice tense. Dr. Richard wants to see us immediately. I'm bringing all the documents I found, Gabriel responded, already gathering the folders. I'll arrive in 2 hours. During the flight to Jacksonville, Gabriel studied each page found. His mother had obsessively documented his grandfather's condition, but kept everything secret. Why? The answer came in an old letter, hidden among the medical records. My dear son, began his grandfather's letter. If you're reading this, it's because your mother has finally revealed our family history. The condition I carry is hereditary, and there's a chance I've passed it on. Your mother chose to hide this truth, fearing that the knowledge could limit your opportunities in life. But you deserve to know, just as your future children deserve to be prepared. Gabriel felt hot tears stream down his face. His grandfather had tried to warn him, but Charlotte had intercepted the message, perpetuating a cycle of secrets that now threatened the lives of his own children. At the clinic, Helen waited for him with Elizabeth. The triplets were with the nanny, allowing the parents to focus on the crucial consultation. The genetic test confirmed, Dr. Richard announced as soon as they sat down. Ryan has Marfan syndrome, a condition that affects connective tissue, mainly the cardiovascular system, Gabriel completed, placing the folders on the table. My grandfather had it, and there's a good chance that I have it too. The doctor quickly examined the documents, his face lighting up with the volume of information. This is extremely valuable. The detailed family history will help us develop a more effective treatment plan. And the other two? Helen asked, her voice barely passing for a whisper. Being identical triplets, all carry the mutation, the doctor explained gently. But the manifestation and severity may vary. Ryan presented the first symptoms, but we'll need to monitor all three equally. Gabriel felt the weight of guilt crush his chest. I should have known, should have investigated our family history before— No, Helen interrupted firmly, holding his hand. It's not your fault. Your mother hid this from everyone, even from you. Dr. Richard nodded, organizing some papers. The important thing now is to focus on treatment. Marfan syndrome is manageable with proper monitoring. We have excellent specialists in our network, and the sooner we start— Cost is not an issue, Gabriel affirmed. I'll do whatever is necessary to ensure the best treatment for my children. And for you, Helen added softly. You need to take care of yourself too, Gabriel. Our children need their father strong and healthy. For a moment, the former couple looked at each other with deep understanding. The hurts of the past seemed small in the face of the challenge they faced. Their children needed them united, strong, ready to fight each battle that came. The waiting room of the pediatric cardiology clinic had become a second home for the family in recent weeks. Helen adjusted Ryan's special little vest, while Gabriel played with Michael and Gabriel Jr., keeping them distracted before the battery of tests. Ready for another adventure with Dr. Hero? Gabriel asked his sons, using the nickname he had created to help them deal with frequent medical visits. It's impressive how they don't cry anymore when they see the white coat, commented Dr. Sophia, a specialist in pediatric cardiology, approaching with a gentle smile. I see the superhero trick worked. Helen smiled, observing how her little ones now faced medical consultations as a kind of game. It was one of many strategies she and Gabriel had developed together to make the process less frightening for the triplets. The results of the latest tests are in, Dr. Sophia announced, guiding them to her office. And I have good news. Gabriel instinctively held Helen's hand, a gesture that had become natural in recent weeks. She didn't pull away. The shared concern for their children had created a new form of intimacy between them. The treatment is responding well, the doctor explained, showing images of the exams. Ryan's heart is reacting positively to the medications, and the preventives for Michael and Gabriel Jr. are keeping their conditions stable. And what about the growth indicators? Helen asked, her business mind always attentive to details. Within expectations for the syndrome, Dr. Sophia answered. The special vests you developed at Little Angels are making a significant difference in postural support. It was true. After the diagnosis, Helen had redirected part of her development team to create a line of specific clothes for children with Marfan syndrome. The project, initially conceived only for the triplets, was transforming into a new division of the company. Other families need this support, Helen had explained when presenting the idea to the board. Let's transform our experience into something bigger. Gabriel, who had attended the meeting as a special consultant, had been impressed with Helen's capacity to convert challenges into opportunities to help others. Daddy, look! Michael's voice brought everyone back to the present. The little one had found a toy stethoscope, and was trying to use it on Gabriel Jr., who was laughing heartily. "We have our future doctor here," joked Dr. Sophia, observing the scene with affection. Ryan, always quieter, observed everything from his special place in Helen's lap. His eyes, so similar to his father's, carried a wisdom that seemed beyond his 5 months of age. "We need to discuss the next steps," the doctor continued, her professional tone returning, "including the tests for you, Gabriel." Helen felt Gabriel, tense beside her. The discovery that he himself might have the syndrome was still a delicate subject. "I'll do all necessary tests," he responded firmly. "I need to be healthy to take care of them." "We'll do it together," Helen said softly, surprising herself and him. "You're not alone in this anymore." The moment was interrupted by Michael, who decided that his father urgently needed a consultation with his toy stethoscope. The laughter that followed broke the tension, reminding everyone that even amid challenges there was room for joy. "Before you go," Dr. Sophia commented, "I want to congratulate you. It's not common to see parents handling such a complex diagnosis so well. The way you've transformed the challenge into something positive, not just for your children but for other families. It's inspiring." Helen and Gabriel exchanged a significant look. Amid constant concern and sleepless nights, they had found a new form of partnership, different from what they had before, but equally profound. Elizabeth's house, which had become the family's meeting point, was quiet that night. The triplets had finally fallen asleep after a busy day of tests and consultations. Helen was organizing some documents in the living room, while Gabriel, seated on the porch, looked pensively at the sea. "A penny for your thoughts," she said, approaching with 2 cups of tea. "I was thinking about how life takes turns," he replied, accepting the drink. "A few months ago I was sunk in bitterness, looking for you without knowing I was looking for much more than that." Helen sat in the chair beside him, allowing herself to relax for the first time that day. "And now here we are, united by 3 little warriors." "You did an amazing job with them," Gabriel commented, his voice laden with admiration. "The way you structured everything, the company, the medical support, every detail thought out for their well-being." "I had help," she replied, looking affectionately at the main house where Elizabeth lived. "Sometimes angels appear in the most difficult hours." A moment of comfortable silence established itself between them, broken only by the sound of waves and the baby monitor, which transmitted the soft breathing of the triplets. "I received news from Boston today," Gabriel finally said. "The police found my mother." Helen straightened in her chair, attentive. "Where?" "In a luxury resort in Switzerland. She was living with the money she diverted from the company." He paused, taking a sip of tea. "She'll be extradited next week." "How are you feeling about that?" "Confused," he admitted. "Part of me wants to confront her, demand explanations about everything. The lies, the embezzlement, my grandfather's disease that she hid. But another part just wants to move forward, focus on what really matters now." Helen extended her hand, lightly touching his arm. "You don't need to decide everything now. We have a lot to worry about in the present." As if to confirm her words, a soft cry sounded on the baby monitor. It was Ryan, probably uncomfortable with the orthopedic vest. "I'll go," Gabriel offered, standing up. Helen watched him walk into the house, noticing how he had changed in recent months. The relentless businessman had given way to a dedicated father who had learned to change diapers with the same precision with which he once closed million-dollar contracts. Minutes later, he returned with Ryan in his arms, the little one now, calmer. "He just needed an adjustment to the vest," he explained, sitting down again. "You've adapted well to all of this," Helen commented, observing how Ryan naturally nestled in his father's chest. "I had a good teacher," he smiled, looking at her with gratitude. "Helen, I know we still have a lot to resolve between us, many wounds to heal, but I want you to know that I'm committed not just to our children, but to the idea of us being a family, in whatever way is possible." She felt her heart slightly accelerate. "One day at a time, Gabriel. We've already learned in the worst way that rush and assumptions can destroy precious things." Ryan let out a small, satisfied sigh, as if approving of his parents' conversation. On the monitor, They could hear Michael muttering in his sleep, probably dreaming of his medical adventures. "One day at a time," Gabriel agreed, his voice soft so as not to disturb the son falling asleep in his arms. "And each day beside them is a gift I don't deserve, but for which I am eternally grateful." The visiting room of the women's penitentiary in Boston was cold and impersonal. Charlotte, even wearing the prison's standard uniform, maintained her haughty posture when Gabriel and Helen entered. For a moment her eyes widened seeing the couple together, but she quickly recovered her mask of indifference. "What a pleasant surprise," Charlotte commented, her voice distilling irony. "I see you found your family." Gabriel sat across from his mother, Helen at his side. In her bag, photos of the triplets and medical documents awaited the right moment. "Why, Mother?" Gabriel asked directly. "Why hide Grandpa's illness? Why manipulate that entire situation with Helen?" Charlotte adjusted herself in the chair, her eyes avoiding her son's. "I did what was necessary to protect you, to protect our name, our position." "Protect?" Helen interrupted, her voice controlled but firm. "By destroying a family, by concealing a medical condition that could have been treated early on?" "You don't understand," Charlotte responded, her veneer of calm beginning to crack. "Your grandfather's disease was a scandal in society. People whispered, speculated about heredity. I couldn't allow that to happen again." Gabriel placed on the table his grandfather's letter, found among the old documents. "He tried to warn me. He tried to ensure I knew the truth, that I could prepare myself, prepare my future children." "Children?" Charlotte laughed bitterly. "That's what she wanted, isn't it? To create heirs to take what is ours." "Your grandsons," Helen corrected, placing the photos of the triplets on the table. "Michael, Gabriel, and Ryan. 3 perfect boys who carry the syndrome you tried to hide." Charlotte's face lost all color upon seeing the photographs. Her grandsons were identical to Gabriel as a baby, each detail a perfect replica. "They needed to start treatment at 5 months, Gabriel continued, his voice laden with contained emotion. 5 months of precious time lost because you chose to keep secrets, because you preferred to manipulate, lie, destroy. Charlotte began, but the words died in her throat. Helen opened a folder, revealing medical reports. Ryan, our youngest, was the first to show symptoms. Now all 3 need constant monitoring. Gabriel is also in treatment. "Treatment?" Charlotte whispered, for the first time appearing truly shaken. "Yes, Mother. I have the syndrome too. All these years. You knew of the risk and chose to keep me in ignorance." Charlotte sank into the chair, her mask of control finally crumbling. "I just wanted to protect our family." "No," Gabriel cut her off. "You wanted to protect your control over me, over the money, over everything, but it's over. There's nothing more for you to control. What do you want from me then?" she asked, her voice now small and defeated. Helen took another document from her folder. "We want you to sign the waiver of any rights over the triplets. No contests, no legal games, no more manipulations." "And in return," Charlotte automatically asked, years of negotiations emerging in her tone. "In return," Gabriel responded, "we'll ensure you have access to adequate medical treatment here. And when you get out, you'll have a modest pension to live on, far away from us." Charlotte looked for a long time at the photos of the grandsons she would never know, at the son she had lost through her own greed, at the daughter-in-law she had tried to destroy and who now sat there strong and determined. "Do you have a pen?" she finally asked, her voice defeated. As Charlotte signed the documents, Helen felt Gabriel's hand seek hers under the table, a simple gesture that carried the weight of all the battles they had faced together. "Goodbye, Mother," Gabriel said simply when they finished. "I hope you find peace." As they left the penitentiary, the afternoon Boston sun welcomed them with its characteristic warmth. On Helen's phone, a message from Elizabeth showed the triplets playing in the garden, oblivious to the significant moment their parents had just experienced. "Ready to go home?" Gabriel asked softly. "The boys must be waiting for their story before dinner." Helen smiled, realizing how the word home had gained a new meaning in recent months. "Yes," she replied. "Let's go home." Elizabeth's garden was decorated for a special occasion. Colorful balloons danced in the sea breeze, while a discreet banner announced, "Happy first birthday, Triplets." It was hard to believe a year had passed since that turbulent night at the hospital. Helen adjusted the final details of the decoration, specially developed by the Little Angels team for children with special needs. Each element had been designed to be safe and comfortable for the little ones who, despite their limitations, were already beginning to take their first steps. "Michael, not so fast with that walker," Gabriel called, running after his most adventurous son, who already demonstrated an impressive determination to overcome his physical limitations. Gabriel Jr. observed everything from his special place on the activity mat, laughing at his brother's antics, while Ryan, always the most cautious, held onto Elizabeth's legs, rehearsing hesitant steps. "They're growing so fast," Elizabeth commented, moved. "And getting stronger every day." It was true. The intensive treatment had worked wonders. The special vests developed by Helen's team had become a success among other families facing similar challenges. The medical line of Little Angels was now an international reference in products for children with rare syndromes. "The latest medical report was excellent," Helen commented, approaching with a special cake, without refined sugar and with ingredients carefully selected for the boy's specific diet. "Dr. Sophia said she's never seen such a positive response to treatment." Gabriel smiled, finally managing to catch Michael and bring him back to the center of the garden. "It's because they have their mother's strength and their father's determination," she completed, exchanging a significant look with him. The last few months had been intense. Between medical consultations, development of new products, and adaptation to a new family dynamic, Helen and Gabriel had rediscovered each other. It was no longer the impetuous love of the first years of marriage, but something deeper, forged in the battles they had faced together. "Helen," Gabriel called softly, taking advantage of a moment when the babies were distracted with Elizabeth. "We need to talk." She felt her heart slightly accelerate. In recent weeks, Gabriel had been especially thoughtful, making mysterious calls and having secret meetings with architects. "I bought the house next door," he revealed, his eyes shining with expectation. "Or rather, I bought the land. I'd like to build something new there, something ours." "Gabriel, I'm not proposing we return to what we were," he continued quickly, "but I thought of a house specially designed for the boys' needs, with integrated medical equipment, space for physical therapy, an adapted room for each one." "And where would you stay in this house?" Helen asked, her heart beating faster. "Wherever you allow me to stay," he answered simply. "Be it in a separate wing, be it—" A joyful shout interrupted him. Ryan had taken his first steps alone, staggering toward his brothers. In seconds, all three were together, laughing and trying to balance on each other. "Look at that," Elizabeth commented, wiping away a tear. "They're stronger together, exactly like their parents." Helen observed her sons, so small and already so brave. She looked at the house where she had rebuilt her life, at Elizabeth, who had become a second mother, and finally at Gabriel, who was watching her with that same look that had made her fall in love years ago. "Yes," she finally answered. "Circa, let's build something new, something ours." Gabriel's smile illuminated his entire face, and for a moment, Helen saw that same smile reflected in the faces of the three little warriors who had changed.